Welcome back to the deep dive. You bring the source material, we plunge in, extract the core insights, and help you get informed fast.
Consider us your guides through, well, all the information out there. We find the patterns and explain why certain details really matter.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we're stepping back into a really specific moment in World War II, picking up after that successful raid on the Luftwaffe airfield we talked about before.
Right.
But the bigger picture in North Africa, 1942, it was pretty brutal.
It really was. We're looking specifically at the situation near El Alamein. The combined German and Italian forces, they'd pushed the British and Commonwealth forces hard.
Yeah, really hard. They'd taken Tobruk, right, which was a huge blow.
A massive loss, exactly. And they reached this critical point at El Alamein.
And the advance towards the Suez Canal just stalled there, mostly because of the Qatar Depression to the south. You know, it's just impassable terrain for armor.
So it just turned into this grinding battle of attrition. Horrible fighting.
And the cost was just immense. The sources lay out some pretty stark numbers. British and Commonwealth losses, something like 13,250 out of 150,000 troops, just at that point.
Yeah, a seriously high price just to hold the line, essentially.
And amidst all that chaos, there's this big change happening at the top. General Auchinleck was replaced.
Right, and General Gott was just arriving, literally just about to take command of the 8th Army.
So a very volatile moment, both on the ground and in terms of leadership.
Definitely. Now, the source material for this deep dive is, well, it's quite unique. It comes from a tabletop role-playing game called Sand and Steel.
Yeah, it uses the Cepheus Modern rule set, and it's explicitly inspired by that SAS Rogue Heroes TV series.
Which is interesting.
So for us, it's basically like a detailed recreation, almost a simulation of a specific LRDG mission. That's the long-range desert group.
And that gives us this fantastic sort of granular look at what operating deep behind enemy lines in that kind of environment was actually like, or at least how it's being imagined here.
Exactly. So, okay, what was the mission objective? As briefed by this Major Alan Kilburn at the Hammam Box Supply Depot.
Well, the main goal was pretty clear. Locate a German Panzer column, one that had gone missing after a big sandstorm southwest of the box, their base area.
Find it, radio its coordinates back. Simple enough on paper.
Simple on paper, yeah. And then disable or destroy it.
Right, the tricky part.
But there was also this crucial secondary objective, capture German soldiers if possible, for interrogation.
Ah, intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. They were hoping to get information about hidden reserve bases, maybe find out the real size of the reinforcement columns. Rommel was expecting high-stakes stuff.
Okay, let's dive into the simulation then. Session 1. How did the team prep, and what was that initial journey like?
The preparation described is incredibly detailed. It really reflects the sheer self-sufficiency these LRDG patrols needed. They took a truck and a jeep, loaded absolutely to the brim with supplies.
Everything they'd need.
Weapons, obviously. Anti-tank rifles, specifically for those Panzers they were hunting. Demolition kits, and enough food and water for 10 days.
10 days! And we get introduced to the crew through these details, too. Uncle Mike and Ollie, the experienced drivers.
Right. Then Pikey, Jack, Grant, Hank, and Max. You get a sense of this small, tight-knit unit straight away.
And their travel plan. Smart desert survival, basically.
Absolutely. Setting out before dawn, traveling during the cooler parts of the day, and then resting, holing up during that brutal midday heat. Survival 101 out there.
And almost immediately, something unexpected happens. They run into some Bedouin.
Yeah, that's right. After spotting signs of a camp, they made a decision. Cautious, but calculated, to try and make contact.
How'd they approach that? Carefully, I imagine.
Very. Pikey and Jack went forward, unarmed, trying to show they weren't a threat, while the others stayed back, hidden with the vehicles.
That sounds like classic desert diplomacy. Sharing cigarettes, gestures, trying to build some trust.
And, well, it really paid off. They were invited to stay, given rich food, that famous sweet mint tea. It wasn't just hospitality, it was real cultural engagement happening.
And Ollie's bit of French turned out to be crucial.
Absolutely key. It let him communicate, at least basically, with a chief Afif.
And Afif had seen the Germans.
He had. He'd encountered the German column 3 days earlier. And the vital piece of information, they were traveling during the day in the heat.
Which is unusual, right? Risky.
Very. And it allowed Uncle Mike to immediately adjust their search pattern, their course. Without that piece of intelligence picked up through, just talking to locals, they might have completely missed the column in that huge desert.
It really shows how vital that local knowledge was. Something maybe not always stressed in the big military histories. You could argue the mission's success hinged on this one conversation.
Definitely. And you get these little human details, too, like a dancer apparently showing some interest in Pikey and him being very proper about it, respecting their host. It's about navigating culture as much as sand dunes.
And another telling detail. They saw some Bedouin men using a discarded German jerry can.
Yeah, spitting gasoline from it into a fire to make it flare up.
Just simple, solid proof that enemy soldiers had been through that area, left their gear behind.
So they set watches that night naturally. Couldn't get too comfortable, even with generous hosts. But they definitely appreciated the shelter from the cold desert night, woke up at dawn, and the whole Bedouin camp was already packing up, ready to move on. Very transient life.
Session 2 then picks up as they leave the Bedouin camp. Chief Afif even gives them a gift, some goat skins of camel milk.
A nice gesture of gratitude. And yeah, the source mentions Pikey having a sort of brief, shy moment with that Bedouin woman before they drove off. Little human connection.
So back on the move. Uncle Mike navigating, Ollie following in the other vehicle. Around midday, they spot something. A glint in the distance.
Grant and Uncle Mike get the binoculars on it. And it turns out to be pretty significant. A half-buried German army truck. And it had the 21st Panzer Division insignia on it.
Okay, so not the main column, but definitely related. Did they find anything useful inside?
They did, actually. 3 crates stuffed with German stick grenades, 36 of them. Always handy.
Definitely. What else?
Ignition keys, maybe not useful for that specific truck, but still.
Yeah.
And a folder with some documents, carbon copy orders for the division's move, about 8 days old, though, and a map. Looked like it was torn from an old French guidebook.
Okay. And they figured out what happened to the truck.
Yeah, they deduced the engine was completely ruined. Almost certainly from driving straight through that sandstorm everyone was talking about.
So no chance of salvaging the vehicle itself.
Nope. No point even trying to tow it. So they did the smart thing, stripped it for anything useful. The grenades, obviously. A full jerry can of gasoline. Another half-full can, but the water was brackish. Still, better than nothing.
True. Grab the documents, a spare fan belt.
Right. And they made sure to knock off the wing mirror that was causing that glint they'd spotted. Didn't want anyone else investigating. Smart thinking.
Later that day, they spot vultures circling. A lot of them this time.
Yeah. Never a good sign out there.
Mm-hmm.
They went to investigate on foot, cautiously.
And found
A pretty grim discovery. The remains of 3 German soldiers, stripped bare, half-eaten. Almost certainly the crew from that truck.
Oh, man.
And the sources mentioned this lingering smell of gasoline, suggesting, horribly, that maybe in their desperation they tried to drink fuel.
That's awful. Sounds like maybe inexperienced guys broke down, couldn't cope, and then
Yeah,
later stripped by wanderers.
seems likely. And then, soon after finding the bodies, they stumble across something really bizarre. An unexploded German sea mine.
A sea mine. What's that doing in the middle of the Sahara?
Exactly. Who knows how it got there? It just highlights the sheer unpredictable weirdness and danger of that environment. They wisely decided to just leave it well alone.
Good call. And then, almost right after the mine, they encounter the second group of Bedouin.
Yep, 3 riders this time, led by a chief named Assad. And he immediately puts them on edge.
How so?
Well, for starters, he speaks surprisingly fluent English.
Yeah.
And the first thing he says is, "You have no right to be here." Claims neutrality, but then immediately mentions finding a dying German soldier from a lost column.
Okay. Contradictory.
And one of his companions is openly carrying a German rifle and wearing a German helmet. The alarm bells must have been ringing loud and clear.
Still, they accepted his invitation to follow him to his camp.
Cautiously, yes. His camp was in some ruined Egyptian temple. They were still hoping maybe for more reliable intelligence than Assad was offering up front.
Right. So they get to the temple ruins, beginning of session 3. Uncle Mike and Ollie stay with the vehicles. Smart move.
Very prudent. Assad claimed the rest of his tribe were just out foraging somewhere. But the atmosphere was clearly tense. Getting worse.
And that suspicion led Pikey to try something clever, didn't it?
It did. Quick thinking. He pretended he needed a lighter from the truck. Just a wooze, so he could get back to their vehicles and secretly check the Bedouin saddlebags while Grant created some kind of distraction.
And what did Pikey find? Confirmed their fears.
Completely. Looted German military gear. A helmet, but with a bullet hole in it. Dog tags, weapons, boots. personal items.
So these guys weren't just neutral finders, they were scavengers. And they definitely encountered more Germans, likely violently, than Assad admitted.
No doubt about it. They weren't neutral at all. Interestingly, the team actually shared some of that brackish water they'd found earlier with Assad's group, even with all this suspicion building.
A small gesture. Meanwhile, Jack's keeping an eye on Assad.
Yeah, trying to keep him talking, keep him distracted, while clearly staying very alert. Assad was visibly nervous by this point.
And Jack's unease makes him decide to get a better view.
Right. He decides to climb one of the tall pillars in the ruins, get a vantage point. Assad protested, obviously didn't want him doing that. Hank gave Jack a hand up.
And just as Jack's getting up there,
Assad shouts out an alert in Arabic. The trap was sprung. It was an ambush.
chaos. Instant reaction from the team.
Immediate. Pikey shoots Assad, then another guard right next to him. Grant takes down the third one. It was fast, brutal. And Jack, up on the pillar. He reached the top just in time to see the full extent of it. 7 more Bedouin hidden up on the temple roof, waiting to open fire. Wow. So a full-blown firefight breaks out? Fierce firefight. Hank, thinking fast, lobs a grenade up onto the roof, which takes out a few of them. Max is laying down accurate covering fire from below with his rifle.
Hank follows up with the Bren gun.
Yeah, raking the remaining ambushers on the roof. Pikey's still picking off targets. And Jack's actually in a fist fight up there for a moment before he can draw his pistol and finish it.
Intense doesn't quite cover it.
Not at all. They survived it, but not unscathed. Hank took a bullet wound, needed immediate attention. Jack got his jaw bruised up pretty good in that scuffle.
So after the fight, they search the bodies, search the ruins.
And find more proof. Supplies, identity papers from 4 different German soldiers, including a lieutenant, confirmed these Bedouin had definitely dealt with Germans.
And Hank, despite being wounded, makes a vital find.
He does. A hidden cistern under the flagstones. Fresh water. Absolutely crucial for them out there. Save them, really.
Resourcefulness strikes again, and they decide to hold up in the captured temple ruins for the night.
Yes, and they pull that clever trick, propping up the bodies of the dead Bedouin around the perimeter.
To make it look like it's still guarded, straight out of the SAS playbook, like you said.
Exactly. They spent the night there, used the water, the captured supplies, tended to Hank's wound. And Session 4 starts with them confirming their little deception worked.
No visitors during the night?
Apparently not. An uneventful night suggests anyone watching from a distance was fooled by the guards.
Okay, so morning comes. They free the camels they found, secure the horses they now have, and set off again. Uncle Mike navigating. But the journey gets interrupted again, doesn't it, by more vultures?
Yeah, a lot more vultures this time. A huge number circling in the distance.
Yeah.
They approached cautiously, expecting something bad.
And it was bad.
Horrific, actually. A pile of dozens of dead German soldiers. Just dead. Victims of the desert, heat stroke, dehydration, exposure. Not combat.
Grim. But beyond that awful scene, they finally found it.
Yes, the main objective. The stranded German column. Opel Blitz trucks, Panzer tanks, all half buried in sand drifts. Engines totally seized by the sandstorm. Immobilized.
And the surviving soldiers, what state were they in?
Terrible shape. Desperate. Sweltering under makeshift shelters they'd rigged up. One guy actually started crying out for help when he saw the LRDG vehicles, thinking they were rescuers.
So what's the plan now? They found them.
Okay, Peggy gets sent back quickly to have Uncle Mike radio in a precautionary airstrike, just in case things go sideways.
Good thinking. While Grant actually goes forward, offers water to some unarmed Germans who are approaching them.
Yeah, a gesture of, well, maybe humanity. Or maybe just assessing the situation. Their desperation must have been overwhelming, just walk up like that.
But that moment, that potential pause, it just shatters instantly.
It does. A German officer, further back in the column, sees them properly, recognizes the British uniforms or vehicles, and immediately orders his men to open fire.
And Jack gets hit again.
Yeah, lucky again, though, apparently not too serious.
Yeah.
But a tense firefight erupts right there amongst the wrecked tanks. They're using the German vehicles for cover.
Hank's Bren gun comes into play again.
Absolutely, laying down, suppressing fire. Max gets a confirmed kill with his Lee Enfield. They're fighting back hard.
And then Pikey returns with Uncle Mike in the Jeep.
Right, bringing the Vickers heavy machine gun into the fight. That extra firepower combined with the surprise and the state the Germans were in,
Yeah.
it was enough.
The German officer surrenders.
He does. The remaining officer throws in the towel.
So how many survivors did they end up with?
39 surviving Germans.
Yeah.
And the source says they were just pathetically grateful to be captured, basically. Their own vehicles were completely useless, beyond any repair.
Which leads to that really clever bit of improvisation for getting the prisoners back.
Yeah, The LRDG ingenuity shines through again. They stripped down one of the captured Opel Blitz trucks to its basic chassis, essentially turning it into a big, towable trailer for the prisoners.
Brilliant. Resourceful.
Then they set demolition charges on all the remaining German tanks and trucks, make sure nothing's left for the enemy, and they managed to cancel that precautionary airstrike just in the nick of time.
Hurricanes flew over right after. Close call.
Very close. So they load all the captives onto their improvised trailer, hook it up, and start the slow, difficult journey back toward the temple ruins.
Back to that known water source.
That's
Makes
right.
sense.
Exactly. At the temple, they distributed more food and water from that hidden Bedouin cache they had found earlier and set up a very careful watch over the prisoners. A lot of prisoners for a small team to handle.
And critically, the intelligence objective. They found something on the captured officer.
They did. Major breakthrough. Documents found on the captured captain revealed the location of a German supply base. That was the jackpot, really. Exactly the kind of intel command wanted.
Fantastic. So, next morning, final leg, Uncle Mike charts a direct course back to the main base at El Hammam. Must have been a tough journey.
Grueling days travel described, towing that makeshift trailer full of prisoners across the desert. And Jack was apparently doing a skillful job managing the captured horses alongside the slow-moving vehicles, everyone contributing.
And they finally arrive back at El Hammam base. Major Kilburn's reaction.
Astonished, apparently, by the sheer number of prisoners they brought back, but absolutely thrilled with the intelligence about that supply base. A huge win.
But then Kilburn drops some bombshell news on them. News that changes everything back at HQ.
Yeah, stunning news. General Godolphin-Leck's replacement, the guy who was supposed to be taking over the 8th Army right then.
He was killed.
His plane was shot down over the Mediterranean en route. Just gone before he even really took command.
Wow. Talk about upheaval. And the news of who was coming next.
Lieutenant General Bernard Montgomery. He was on his way to take charge of the 8th Army, a completely different kind of commander.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Looking at this deep dive, the overall mission described in the source material. Clearly a success.
Oh, absolutely. From an operational standpoint, mission accomplished. They located and neutralized that missing Panzer column. They brought back a significant number of prisoners. And crucially, they got that vital intelligence on the enemy supply base.
And what factors really jump out from the source material as contributing to that success? What made it work?
Well, several things. Skilled navigation, that was baseline, non-negotiable out there. Adapting their plan based on the intelligence from that first Bedouin group that was absolutely pivotal.
It changed everything.
It really did. Then there's the sheer resourcefulness. Salvaging useful gear from the wrecked truck, finding that hidden water cistern at the temple, pure survival skill. Their combat effectiveness, too, both in the ambush and against the Germans, was obviously key.
And quick thinking, like canceling the airstrike.
Right. Good judgment under pressure. It all came together.
This simulation, this source material, it really paints a vivid picture of what these small unit actions were like in the desert. It's so much more than just fighting. It's planning, it's survival, intelligence gathering, cultural encounters, and, let's be honest, a fair bit of luck involved, too.
It really underscores the vital role these highly adaptable, self-sufficient LRDG teams played, doing reconnaissance disruption in places where larger forces just couldn't operate effectively.
So this mission was a clear success, delivered key intel. But the timing. Their return coincides almost exactly with General Gottsched's death and the news that Montgomery is inbound. That intelligence lands on a brand new commander's desk, right as a massive battle at El Alamein is brewing.
Yeah, it leaves you with a really interesting thought, doesn't it? How would a commander like Montgomery, known for meticulous planning and, well, a certain kind of aggression, how would he use the specific intelligence this LRVG team just brought back about that supply base, about the state of at least some German units?
And what does the arrival of such a forceful personality mean for this small team? For their future missions, operating under this new, very different command structure with these huge changes sweeping through the 8th Army?
It's definitely something to ponder as you think about this deep dive into the sands of 1942 North Africa.
Thanks for exploring this with us.
Until our next dive.